What up, nation? Welcome to another edition of the Wise Take NFL DFS Wise Stream. CK013 here. You can find me on Twitter at CK_013. And I'm joined once again by the GOAT, the true OG. Many of you know as Paulie D. Sans Patio Joe, who is out who is out for another week. You can find Paulie on Twitter at Paulie with 8 D's. Paulie, what's happening?
What up, man? I'm here. I'm just looking for a pen to take notes with as we do this dirty. Nation, we're putting in the time. We're doing the dirty. We're doing the show when my Yankees are in a do or die situation. So when they do the dirty, which will probably be soon because LeMahieu, I think, is up and Judge is right behind that. Top of the eighth, I think. Shout it out in the chat so I can smile and celebrate. And, we're here for NFL, best sport ever. And we got pretty decent slate. I'm happy to have a couple games that I didn't really love fall off the slate and, kind of narrow my player pool just a bit. We got a couple spots that I think are going to be like heavy chalk, similar to last week. And, it's funny because like the last few weeks we've been like, this chalk can't bust, This is the first week where I'm not really into a ton of the chalk, like nowhere near as high on it as the weeks pass. So we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, man. I think like I haven't even been too in touch with ownership projections. I mean, I've looked and I got them pulled. I got a few different ones pulled up for me to get an idea. But I'm just I'm just trying to play the best plays that I can play. You know what I mean? Shout out to you know who.
Money.
But yeah, I'm with you, man. It's been tournament wise, it's been an interesting start to the season. We've like you said, we're losing games from COVID related things. Which, by the way, the Jet game is on. It turns out it was another false positive, supposedly, for the Jets. So, but yeah, we got the Patriots in Denver kicked off the slate. We've got the Bills and Tennessee kicked off the slate. So, on top of that, we already have the Packers and Lions not playing. So this is the smallest slate that we will have had for a main slate on a Sunday. And I'm excited for that, man, because those big ones, like, they're fun, they're exciting, but they're a lot. Like, it's a lot, So we'll do what we do, and that is do dirties right now. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this because I'm sure we got a lot to discuss. Let's talk about some quarterbacks, Paul. I want to talk about some quarterbacks. We'll isolate them into tiers as we always do, starting with the spend ups, if you will. But I want to know what quarterbacks you're looking to spend up on, if any.
All right. This feels like a week we're going to have a decent amount of money, where you can, first of all, the most expensive player is like 7-9, I think, or 8-1. Usually we got guys in the 9s, even sometimes 10K. And we've got a ton of value opening up. We got Jet receivers. We got Falcon receivers. We've got a lot of cheap players on the Giants, cheap players on Jacksonville. So you can get whoever you kind of want, and at quarterback, I tend to lean to the pricier guys that have the higher floors, higher ceilings, because when they get that 35, they really separate from the rest of the field, especially on a smaller slate where, only maybe one or two quarterbacks may break 30. You know what I mean? And the majority of the rest of the quarterbacks, like in the middle of the pack, are usually in the 20 to 22 range. And that 10-point gap is hard to make up at other positions, because there's usually not that much separation at the other positions. You'll usually have a handful of running backs over 30, a ton of them in the 20s, where quarterbacks in the 30s, 2, 3, max of 4 usually. Very rarely do we get more. So I do like the spend ups at QB. We're going to have the money to play them. This looks like just a great running spot for Lamar Jackson against Cincinnati. He ran for like a $130 once against him last year. Did phenomenal against him in both matchups. Their defense is not much improved, but their offense is. So they could maybe keep it closer than expected, which they have done for the most part over the last few games against them, and maybe push Lamar to an even higher ceiling, bounce back status. He really hasn't had a ton of like massive games. So I do like Lamar. Really like Patrick Mahomes. Number one, he's got tremendous history against the Raiders. They're terrible against the pass. And he's a nice leverage play off of what appears to be the chalkiest player on the slate in Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He may be a nice way to like over correlate with Helaire and pair them. But I think, if you're playing a lot of Helaire, then you want to do some Mahomes plus the receivers kind of stacks as a hedge against your own shit or leverage against the field who's going to be heavily invested in Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And then I do like the Dallas Giants game, so I'll have some Dak, but I'm really not very high on Dak. He'd probably be my lowest of these spend-ups. And then I guess we're cutting it at Kyler Murray, who I like also. This just seems to be like a blow-up spot against the Jets. He should be able to throw the ball a ton. Should be able to run all over them. Their running back is a little bit dinged up, struggling. Their O-line is bad. The Jets' D-line is decent, so maybe they force them to run some. And I like the decent price savings off of like Mahomes and Lamar. So I would say of those guys we just talked about, like Lamar and Mahomes I'll have the most of. And then Kyler a little bit less and Dak a lot less. I'm not really that into Dak. I like a lot of his like supporting cast. But I feel like he's got to have a down game at some point, and some of his maybe a defensive touchdown, or maybe Zeke gets going, or maybe it's a reverse or like a receiver pass to another receiver, something weird. But I just don't think Dak's going to hit another ceiling and be the best quarterback on the slate. And the Giants defense, surprisingly, has actually been decent. So it's Lamar and Mahomes at the top. We got the money. I do like Kyler, and I'll have a sprinkle at Dak.
Yeah, I'm with you on Dak. I'm not really into Dak this week either. The Giants defense has been sneaky good with the defensive line, pass rushing. I think they're like 10th in quarterback pressures or something like that. So I'm with you on Dak. The other spend ups, I really only have interest in two of them. One of them is Lamar Jackson. Like you mentioned, this is a phenomenal spot for Lamar to run. In general, last year when Lamar faced virtually the same defense, he finished QB1 and QB2 on the slate the two times he saw them. And it kind of makes sense. Cincinnati's been really bad at pressuring the quarterback. And on top of that, they play a lot of man. And whenever you play a lot of man against a rushing quarterback, that means the secondary, usually when they have a man, they have their backs turned towards the quarterback because they're following that receiver. So I'm with you. I think it's a really good rushing spot for Lamar Jackson. I like his receivers as well, receiving options, I should say, because Mark Andrews and Hollywood are the main ones. So I definitely want to find, and like you said, I think there's enough value. Even if it's not just one guy, there's a few of them. And there's enough value to where you can comfortably get him if you want him without sacrificing too much. Kyler Murray's the other one that was that.
The Ravens are number 2 in football in 10-yard runs, and the Bengals have allowed the second most 10-yard plus runs.
Yeah, it makes sense. Perfect match. Kyler Murray's the other one I'm interested in. You'd mentioned the Jets. It's just their secondary, man. I think that Arizona's offense has looked really terrible, and I know that the Jets on paper, like as far as DVP metrics go, the Jets look really bad against the run. But their DVOA numbers still tell us that the pass is really when you want to attack them. They're 7th against the run and 22nd against the pass. And that I think a lot of the reasons that the running backs is more of like a bend and finally break situation. The offense and the defense gets so worn out because the offense isn't able to move the ball that eventually the guy breaks one. Or in Mostert's case, they do it early. But yeah, I think that the Jets secondary is horrendous. And we even saw it against Denver, man. That Ripon kid just was like picking them apart. Judy caught that one. That was a pick with any other secondary. That was a pick. and the dude went right off the dude's head. So I like Kyler Murray's chances. I know last week he struggled a little bit against Carolina's zone, but I think he bounces back. And Kyler Murray, not for nothing, but he leads the NFL in rush yards for a quarterback. Like, he leads the NFL in rush yards, and he leads the NFL in rushing touchdowns for quarterbacks. So he's one of the few guys that, like, I'm totally cool with just stacking one person. I try to always do triple stacks because you want the quarterback to really maximize his upside. But when a guy is such a threat to run, I'm okay with doing him and just one guy. You know, I'm cool with just him and D-Hop. I'm fine with that. But yeah, those are the main two. Don't get me wrong. I think this is a phenomenal spot for Mahomes, and I'll probably have some of him in my MME teams. I'm just really concerned that the Chiefs are going to be able to run the ball. And even when you look at what Mahomes has done against the Raiders over the last 2 seasons, when he's on the road, he's had those blow-up games because I think the Raiders have been a little more competitive. When he's been at home, they just completely destroyed the Raiders, and he just didn't have to do much. So I think in MMEs, it's always worth a shot. I think you make a great point about the leverage spot because I do expect Clyde Edwards-Helaire to be very popular. So I think it is some leverage. If he doesn't do well, it's probably because Mahomes did, and they decided to pass, or he ran in for a couple touchdowns, or whatever the case is. So I definitely understand that. What about this mid-tier range? We'll call it mid-tier from Deshaun Watson down. We'll stop it at like 6K.
Mm-hmm. So do really like Deshaun Watson. Coaching change, nut spot. Jacksonville's defense, not very good. Although they have been decent against the pass, surprisingly. I just, I think some of that's like smoke screens. Thorough Joe Burrow went for 300 against them. Fucking the Tennessee quarterback had like a career day against them. You know what I mean? I think, we're dealing with very, very small sample sizes, and the reality is it's not a good D. Houston's at home. Coaching change, usually that leads to, at least in the first game, a little bit of effort. And, Deshaun needs to kind of prove himself, or, as good a spot as any, good history against them. I expect him to throw. I expect him to get yards on the ground. I expect him to do whatever he wants. So I do like Deshaun. Ben Roethlisberger, I do like him. I know I like a lot of these guys, but the list is going to cut off fairly soon. You can certainly throw against the Eagles. I mentioned that stat about running against the Bengals. Pittsburgh is like 7th in 20-yard passes, and Philly allows like the 7th most of those. So that's like a match made in heaven. We've been able to pass on Philly for a while, and Philly's good against the run. Pass funnel D, Ben Roethlisberger, should be able to accumulate a lot of yards, and it's possible that Philly leads. I do think Pittsburgh's a better team, but you never know. They just beat San Fran, and if we get that situation, it could be glorious for Ben as like a low-owned, high upside kind of play. Then it kind of, it drops off for me. There's only a couple other guys I like. Matt Ryan against Carolina. He's done great historically. That's a nice price. He's got to be looking to bounce back. Carolina's defense is not good all around. I think 300 yards, multiple touchdowns at home. Matt Ryan's been glorious at home. Cheap price, low ownership. Makes a lot of sense. Gardner Minshew against Houston. Like, Houston's been terrible. Giving up a ton of points. They're just getting burned by QBs. I don't love Minshew. I really don't think he's that good, but he can run some, and they're usually trailing, and the guy throws a ton. He got his number 1 receiver back. That looks to click. Relatively cheap stack. And I think the Jacksonville running back is going to be kind of chalky. So it's another kind of leverage play similar to Mahomes. But I'm not that into it, but I'll have some. Joe Burrow, another one I'll have a little bit of, like 5%. I think Baltimore's defense is overrated. I think Cincinnati, in a trailing role, will score some points here. And, Joe Burrow we've seen him throw 60 times in a game, and this could easily be that kind of situation. We'll see if he can survive like the pass rush or not. Teddy Bridgewater seems to be pretty popular.
We're stopping at 6K.
All right, I'll cut it there then.
Yeah.
Good idea.
In the mid range, I'm with you on Deshaun Watson. Jacksonville looks like they've been good. They haven't given up a ton of fantasy points to receivers and all this stuff. But if you look at the quarterbacks they face, they gave up 363 passing yards to Phillip Rivers. Then they played Tannehill, another run-heavy team. And Tannehill was QB7 that day, even though they were so committed to the run. And then Fitzpatrick, who was QB6 on the week, right? It was a Thursday night football game, and Fitzpatrick kind of picked him apart. It looked like he could have done more had Jacksonville pushed the issue. They just didn't. And then, like you said, 300 passing yards to Joe Burrow. So they really haven't seen an offense that's designed to be explosive. I know Houston hasn't really been all that explosive, but I still think Deshaun Watson's a big-time playmaker, and he's got guys like Will Fuller. I mean, on paper, they should be good. Maybe some of the guys they got are a little washed up, like Randall Cobb, Brandon Cooks. Maybe it's a little past their prime at this point. But on paper, it sounds good, right? And like you said, new coach, all that good stuff. So I'm with you on Deshaun. I think that game shoots out to a degree anyway. I like what you said about Ben Roethlisberger. He's at home. Ownership-wise, he's got to be crazy low. I mean, this game's got one of the lowest totals on the board. He's playing a clear pass funnel D, like you said, and we all know Ben Roethlisberger is notorious for his home and road splits. So I agree with you on that. I think it's a really good spot for Ben Roethlisberger. That was really it for me in this range. There's plenty of guys, that I think are in play, like you said, Matt Ryan, Minshew, all these guys. But I think that's where I'm going to be concentrated in this tier. Now talk to me about Teddy B and company.
Yeah, so Teddy B seems to be trending as, outside of some of like the high-end guy. He's like the trendy, he's like last week's Ryan Fitzpatrick, I guess. I'm really not into it. Like, I get it. On paper, the matchup looks great. They're like top 10 passing the ball. The Falcons are like number 2 giving up through the air. But something tells me he's not going to post another 27 like he did last week against Arizona. He did get a run on the ground that in 6 carries for 32 yards. That kind of bumped his usually pedestrians 19-20 kind of score to a 27. And, I think there's opportunity for the running backs to get it done or special teams or them just not to do as well on the road. Kind of like a letdown spot. So I'll acknowledge that by the numbers, he looks like a good play, but I find it very hard to believe he's going to match, even point per dollar, Matt Ryan, Deshaun Watson, Mahomes, Lamar. So he's there, but I'm fading on him. I liked him more earlier in the week. And there's not much down here that I do really like. Like Danny Jones, I'm going to have some of because I love all the giant skill players. And if I do that, you've got to pair a cheap quarterback with ceiling and running upside. Like this would seem to be the game he could finally get something done. It's a division rivalry. Cowboys look like they can be beat. The Giants, look like they can hang around. They hung around against Pittsburgh. So, you got to get some of him, but I'm not that into it. I really don't want to say this, but, I think Joe Flacco's viable if you really want to get crazy. I think you can throw against Arizona. I think they'll be trailing. I think he might be able to, play a little Joe Flacco on the sneak if you need to for really cheap. And I guess if you say that, then Kyle Allen's also in play for 700 less. But really, down here, it's Danny Jones, a little bit of Teddy B. That's about it for me under 6. I think, we got the money. Why don't we get the guys with the highest score, highest ceiling combinations?
This just in from Chadwick in the chat. Chapman gave up the ass. Yeah. I think Chapman gave up a home run to Brontosaurus Rex, whatever that guy's name is. That's like I'm surprised that was even I guess it makes sense. Going back to the quarterbacks, I got a little bit of different take on a couple of these guys. Bridgewater is one of my favorite quarterbacks going in, and I know like Just it's come to a point where like you keep feeling dumb not attacking certain off defenses that have really like shown you every sign that they're incapable of fixing issues. And I think it's a similar situation with Atlanta. Atlanta's actually been good against the run itself. They just had they're just giving up a lot of what do you call it? Checkdowns. I don't know why I couldn't fucking talk. But they are kind of a pass funnel defense in that right. It seems to me, even if the running back gets it done, Mike Davis, it seems unlikely that Bridgewater is not going to throw him the ball enough to get him that work. On top of that, Atlanta has allowed the most touchdown passes in the league at 13. They've also allowed the most 20-plus yard receptions. So I think that lines up well when you look at the receivers, guys like Robbie Anderson, who we know is a downfield threat. And then we look at, of course, DJ Moore, who's got the highest IDOT, who's got the most air yards. So I know it's like, at the end of the day, like you wonder what ceiling is. But at the same time, I do think ceiling has something to do with the opponent. And in this particular case, I'm with you that I think Atlanta is good enough to keep this game competitive. So I think that's going to keep the foot on the gas. So I'm with you. I think last week, without the rushing touchdown, Bridgewater didn't do all that well. But I think this is the week where he gets it done through the air. And I think it's because that's the way Atlanta's kind of set up. Whether it be the running back or the receivers or even the tight end, which seems unlikely, but against Atlanta definitely is in play. I just don't see how Bridgewater doesn't have something to do with the touchdown. On the flip side, I think that if he doesn't show up, then I think Atlanta just somehow rolls him, which is hard to envision Atlanta rolling anyone. Why? Because their defense is fucking terrible. So I do like Bridgewater a little bit more. I like Danny Jones a little bit more as well. I think I like Bridgewater more, and I think I like the other guys we talked about. Like it's starting to get that way because I think we can just get exposure from Danny Dimes through his receivers who are very cheap. I have some concerns that game doesn't live up to the potential the total shows. I can see that game turning a little bit more sloppy. Dallas finally having a lower scoring kind of game, and that worries me a little bit. But in Danny Dimes' defense, Atlanta has allowed a 12-1 touchdown to interception ratio, which is big for a guy like Danny Dimes who's turnover prone. They've allowed a 66% completion percentage, and opponents are averaging 7.7 yards per attempt versus Dallas. On top of that, Danny Jones himself, we talk about ceiling and floors. Danny Jones has rushed for over 20 yards in 5 straight starts, going back to last season. So he seems willing to run, and a lot of that has to do with him not having the time he needs. But I think it all adds to his upside. So I also expect a lot of people to go to a lot of those min-price receivers, and I have interest in those guys too, to help me get Lamar, to help me get Kyler Murray with some of the studs. But I also have interest in these other guys where I don't need those guys, and I have a chance to take a shot on some other receivers or running backs in the mid-range that have the potential to go for a 30 if those guys are only putting up 10s or 11s, which is obviously a possibility. So I like both scenarios. I want to make sure I'm covered. So I like these are the two quarterbacks in that scenario where I don't think I need them. And I can kind of go for that more balanced type of build. But I do agree with you, though, that we have the value to get to the top, and I'm not going any lower than that. Because, yeah, sure, you can talk about Flacco, Kyle Allen, all this. I'm just not doing it because, like you said, why? It's like why? We don't have an 8,500 player on this slate, right? It's either D-Hop at 79, Zeke at 78, and that's it. It's a pretty big drop-off. And Ridley is 7,500. I am with you on that. Let's go to running backs, Paulie, and take me back to the top. Which, again, I mean, I don't know what we're going to call the top. I guess we could talk about Zeke, and then from there, call it the mid-tier. What do you think?
Okay. I don't think this is a great spot for Zeke. He's got 3 O-linemen hurt. This team wants to pass. There's a chance they're behind. The Giants have been good against the run. I don't know. I think he needs to score 3 touchdowns to be this player that you had to have. If without him, you're done. I don't think he's the highest scoring player position. None of that. And he seems to be popular, and I just kind of want to leverage against. I don't really love Dak in a balanced situation. I think Zeke maybe gets, a touchdown. Dak throws for a couple. But I don't know. I also don't think this game scores as much as like the public and the total thinks. Also, I just like the Giants side because they're so cheap in a finally a good spot. But the Dallas side is meh, but there is a chance that they trail and Dak has another 500 yards, so I'll have some. But Zeke, he's just meh to me. Maybe I'll get like 10%.
I don't disagree. I mean, I'm going to have some Zeke in my MME teams. Like, it's easier for me to do that, like 20, 30%. When I'm actually hand building teams, I have a hard time building a team that I feel comfortable with a minute. And a lot of that has to do with me not feeling so comfortable with him. It's not a usage thing. I just think we have a lot of other running backs who are in similar roles. And I agree with you, Paulie, even though it's, the correlation is always big, home favorites, touchdown or more, whatever. But the Giants' defense has not been as bad as people think. They've played some decent opponents, and it's not like guys are having the easiest time scoring on them constantly. And part of it is because of the defensive line and how good they've been. I think if Zeke gets there, it's because of volume. Now, one thing I will say about Zeke, if Dak is willing to throw to him, which he may be if he's under more pressure than normal, this is a good situation for Elliott on DraftKings to rack up some receptions and receptions yards. The Giants do allow a lot of receptions to the running back. They're good against the run, kind of like Atlanta, but they allow a lot of receptions to the running back. And if you figure Dak's going to be under pressure, that makes me like Zeke a little bit more. With that said, there are a couple of running backs that I really like that are, they're all significantly cheaper than him. So I like Zeke, don't like the ownership on Zeke, and I feel like, kind of like you were saying earlier with the quarterbacks, like I feel like there's leverage somewhere, not necessarily even in Dak, but in the receivers. They can get some exposure from the Cowboys offense to the receivers. So I'll have some Zeke, not a ton. I'm with you on that. Let's take it down to, I guess we'll stop it at like, what do you think? Like maybe like 5K? Or that's pretty big. We'll stop it at 6K.
All right. As I'm looking at this pool, running back's ugly this week. There's just, James Conner's in a really tough spot against Philly. I'll have a little, but doesn't interest me. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, I do like. He's going to be the highest owned player on the slate. That makes me, not want to get too much. And my research screams that this is a Mahomes spot, more so than Helaire.
Why is that, though? Because I disagree. My research screams that this is like definitely a Clyde Edwards-Helaire spot.
Okay. They've played, 4 times in the last 2 years, and Mahomes has just dirtied them.
He dirtied them twice out of 4. He had 2 games and 30-some DraftKings points, 2 games under 20.
Right. And they've just done whatever they wanted at will, and I think that you're going to see that same kind of situation. Oh, the Yanks lost. Fuck.
It's over?
Yeah.
Holy shit. I'm honestly in shock that the Yankees lost that game.
I know, me too. But it is what it is.
It is. So
right. So yeah. All right. They basically put up 28 or more points in all 4 of those games. They seem to be rocking on all cylinders. They're going to be at home, and the Raiders just like they're giving up chunk yardage. I don't know. Let me see. Against who did just play the Raiders?
The Bills.
Stephon Diggs did die dirty. New England, Edelman did the dirty. New Orleans, I don't think anyone really did at the receiver position. That would be like Helaire, the way Kamara did. And then Carolina, Robbie Anderson dirtied them. So I think they struggle with fast receivers, or good receivers. Number 1 receivers, Tyreek the Freak should do really well. And like, I just think this is another one of those like 35-0. Mahomes does whatever he wants. Maybe throws one to an old lineman. Maybe runs some in. But I think this lines up as a really good Patty Mahomes spot.
I don't disagree with any of that. The only part that I disagree with is my concern is if they don't have to let Mahomes do it, they won't. Like we've seen Cincinnati try to run the ball aggressively, And they've had some tough matchups as far as the run game goes. This is going to be a really soft run matchup for them. I mean, Oakland's allowing, even in the past game, we could start with that. Oakland's allowing on average 69 receiving yards per game to running backs. On top of that, they're giving up 5.34 yards per carry against running backs. They have a defensive tackle, Maurice Hurst, who's out on the COVID list. And I think that Kansas City's defense is improved this year. Like I genuinely think that they're improved. And on top of that, when we look at the other side, Jacobs is a good spot for Jacobs. They say that last year they said the same thing, and he never had a good game against them. My issue with Oakland is, can they keep up? I agree with you in that if Oakland keeps up, then yeah, Mahomes is going to ball out because he's going to have no choice but to go. If there's a situation where he's trailing, but if they're up most of the game, which I think they will be, I just think they're going to run the ball. And even more so, the Oakland stacks the box less than any other team in the league. And they're sure as hell not about to stack the box with Patrick Mahomes under center. I think they'd rather get beat by the run at this point and keep the ball out of Mahomes' hands. So I agree that, like, as far as resistance goes, I don't think Mahomes is facing resistance. But I don't think Hilaire is either. Right. And I think that if this game, so it's like, I guess that's what it comes down to. If you like Mahomes, you must think that the Raiders are likely to hang in this game.
No, I don't. I think it's like a 35-3, 35-10, 42-10 kind of trouncing.
Which is what we've seen. The last four scores. So last year, week 13, it was 40-9. Kansas City was home. Mahomes he was 15-29, threw for a touchdown, 175 yards. The week before that, it was 10-28. So still a blowout, but a little bit more competitive. Mahomes went for 30 of 44. He threw the ball 44 times. So it's like, it seems like, and even Mahomes' first game against the Raiders ever, it was 33-40. So it seems like the games that were like really blowouts at home game 40-9, then there was another 35-3. Those are the two home games in the last 2 years. He hasn't had to do much because Oakland was just non-responsive. They were just unable to get in the end zone. But if Oakland does come out swinging and they're capable of scoring a little bit, it seems those are the games that elevated Mahomes. They both happen to be when Oakland was at home, and which has nothing to do with now. Like, we're not using history to predict the future. To me, it's about game script, and I'm worried that Oakland is competitive enough, and if they don't have to push Mahomes, they won't. Like, if they're just as easily having success running the ball, I think they will, because they've given Hilaire those touches. They've shown him that, like, they want that to work. So that's really my main drawback with, like, and listen, I completely get the ownership thing. Like, I do think Mahomes is a good leverage play off of Hilaire, or not even off of him, but with him. We just talked about how you can play him with. Yeah, right. We just talked about how Oakland's allowing on average 69 receiving yards per game to running backs. But yeah, I mean, that's something that I've been circling. Like, I don't want to be in love with two chalky running backs, but I kind of am. So I keep going back to seeing like what are the outcomes. And I've thought about that one. I have, and I do like Tyreek Hill. We'll talk about a receiver. But I think that's my issue, is I feel like I can get exposure to their offense through Hilaire, through Tyreek Hill, maybe even Travis Kelce, and I think that's why I'm not so gung-ho on Mahomes, I guess. But anyway, continue. I just wanted to pick your brain real quick. Continue with the running backs.
Yeah, I know. They just, like, spread it around so much sometimes. It's like, regardless of the game script, it's like, they're going to pass the first, until they get that big lead.
Right.
It's just what they do.
Right.
You know what I mean? And if a lot of it's to Hilaire, then he could have a big game, but they're just going to be methodical. Not many plays run, because they're probably going to score in like 6 plays or less every time they have the ball.
Right.
Just a tough spot for the Raiders. Continuing, James Robinson, man, like, I think he's expensive. I don't really love, like, the player. The fact that what's his name is back, Chark. I feel like they won't need to throw to him as much as they may have earlier in the year. But I mean, the numbers really scream this is a good spot for him. I don't know. I just think he's all right. I prefer Kareem Hunt. I do think Miles Sanders is kind of interesting. With Pittsburgh's pass rush, I could see like a large number of checkdowns. They're still dealing with injuries at the receiver. So we'll see. He could be like one of like a sneaky guy that's been popular before, then has no ownership. Mike Davis, you talked about already, but he does seem to kind of stand out in what should be a high-scoring game in the Dome in Atlanta. Getting all that pass work. Bonifam is out, correct?
Yeah, they put him on an IR.
Yeah, so, no one really to even vulture. I get it, especially on DraftKings. Josh Jacobs, like you mentioned, he didn't do well last year. Seems to be a good spot. We know him and Waller are going to get a ton of volume, so I do like that. I don't mind Jonathan Taylor. I see Cleveland 32nd against the run, but like they seem to almost like you just never know what they're gonna do with the running back. It's not like a true bell cow. That saw Wilkins come in last game. You could see Naeem Hines, grab it in the pass game. But I think it's a really good spot, and I think he'll be loaned, so I can get some of that. And then we'll see if Mostert plays. I do like it. If he's out, I like McKinnon. I think it's a good spot for both those running backs. So we'll see, what that situation is, and that's down to 6.
Yeah, I'm with you. Connor's not a guy that I plan on having a ton of, but I think from a game theory perspective, it does make a lot of sense. I mean, even from the basic correlation of, I'm assuming you like the Steelers defense too. Like, to take price out of it, I'm assuming you like the Steelers too, right?
Yeah.
Like, if price wasn't a thing. So you always have that correlation. Philly's been pretty good against the run. We know that, but they have allowed over 100 total yards in offense with a touchdown on average to running backs. So maybe they could stop Connor to 40 yards, but he gets another 40 yards and a touchdown through the air or something like that. So they're not preventing fantasy points against them. And part of that is because of what we said about the Jets, right? Like, the defense eventually kind of breaks because their offense is not good enough to put them in good positions. So I can see Connor getting there just on volume, just because he ran the ball 25 times, or because he caught the ball, eight times or even 6 or 7 times, and then had the double-digit carries and just eventually got in the end zone. So from a game theory perspective, I do like him. Hilaire and Robinson are probably 2 of my favorite running backs on the slate. I agree that Robinson is a little overpriced, but I honestly think that's going to keep his ownership at bay a little bit. I think people are looking at ownership projections. It does seem like a lot of people are trying to spend up at quarterback, or at least some are trying to get Dak, especially. He seems to be projecting as one of the highest owned quarterbacks. And so with Zeke also projecting for chalk and other lineups, it just seems like people may not have the money to do all 3. Now, maybe they will because they have those chalk 3K receivers. We talked about Hilaire. I like Robinson simply because Houston has been, I haven't seen anything like this before in terms of touchdowns, man. It's just insane. When they played the Steelers, James Conner, 18 carries, 109 yards, and a touchdown. Week 1, Hilaire himself, I think, had 25 carries, 138 yards, and a touchdown. We most recently saw Dalvin Cook, 27 carries, 130 yards, 2 touchdowns. Now, I'm not saying James Robinson is a lock to get no 20-plus carries, but it's very clear that this team is not just allowing general yards. They're giving up a lot of touchdowns to running backs. So I think that once the team gets into the goal line, they're not stopping the running back. So it just seems likely to me that he's going to get in the end zone. On FanDuel, he's got a really low price over there. I know that. On DraftKings, he's considered expensive at 6.7. On FanDuel at 6.6, he's probably considered cheap, especially for a guy that isn't a really good touchdown, not just a rushing matchup, but he's in a good touchdown matchup. So I do like Robinson a lot, and I like the correlation it has with Watson. One thing I will say about Robinson, being as how I do like him, part of me is a little nervous about, like, I think if I do a Watson stack, I may prefer Chark over him. Because if Robinson is the one having a good game, maybe Texans offense is struggling, and so Robinson is getting fed. Whereas if Chark is the one, then okay, this game is just going blow for blow. Both teams think they have to throw. So I'm not saying I won't have Robinson in those stacks, but it does have me thinking. And Paulie, I spoke about you earlier in the week in this. Sometimes I feel like bringing the running back as a bring back, unless it's like a Dalvin Cook or a Derrick Henry, a guy that the offense is built around. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Like, see, like, I was like almost debating picking up Chris Thompson in season long. I mean, I'm about to get hit in week 6 with buys, and the pickings are slim. So if I had better options, I probably wouldn't be. But as I'm looking at it, like Jacksonville's been in close games for the most part, except the Miami game, and that's where James Robinson had his lowest touch volume kind of situation. And if you think Houston's offense does well and like Watson blows up, I feel like it doesn't correlate greatly with Robinson. You know what I mean? I feel like it's almost you're going to need Jacksonville to be leading because of him for that to really work out as a stack. But just as like a one-off play, not in the stack, I think he's all right, especially on DraftKings. But
that's the part I'm struggling with. You mentioned the Miami game, and yeah, they got blown out that game. Every other game was competitive. That was his highest scoring game because he got 6 targets, went for 86 yards receiving. So he ended up going for 30 DraftKings points. So I'm torn. I'm torn. Like, would that have happened had they not been getting killed? Were they relying on Robinson because nothing else was working? So they were like, all right, just fuck it, just get these high percentage passes. Like, that's what has me like conflicted. You know what I mean?
And Chark wasn't there.
And Chark wasn't there.
In the Miami.
And Chark wasn't there. Right? No, 100%. So I'm with you. It's like, now listen, I'm not opposed to like, I really want this game to shoot out. I'll play Robinson and Chark. But my point is that I don't think I'm going to have a Watson team without a receiver, whether it be Chark or the other guy, whereas I could have it without Robinson. I think that's where I'm at. But with that said, overall, stacks aside anything, I do like Robinson a lot this week. It's just a really good matchup for him in general. You mentioned Mike Davis. It's like, I keep fucking up with this guy, man. I keep wanting to like, nah, he's popular, he's Chuck, fuck him. But the usage he's getting is just hard to say no to. And now he's in a matchup where Atlanta has clearly they're just allowing running backs to catch the ball, trying desperately to make up for them getting beat so bad down the field. It just seems at this point you have to have exposure to this guy. Like, you have to. And like a decent amount. You can't just get by 10-15% these days. Because on FanDuel, I think he's fadeable on FanDuel. There's no guarantee he gets in the end zone. I think he does, but there's no guarantee of that. And the PPR don't do you no good. On DraftKings, if the guy is going to get this many targets every week, it's hard to say no, especially when he's in a matchup where the opposing defense just will give you that all game. So it's tough. And like you said, Carolina's defense is shitty. So you expect Atlanta to be able to score and move the ball and put pressure. So with Teddy, without Teddy, I'm going to have some Mike Davis, even though I think his price has come up. And at the end of the day, they're treating him like he's Christian McCaffrey light. They really are. They're giving him the same usage. I guess they want to keep the offense rolling from when McCaffrey comes back, I guess. Like, they want to see the system work, but it's hard to deny at this point.
I'll say one other thing, too. Like, the numbers that everyone's going off of, which are great, have come in games that they were leading. Like, what if they trail? What could his numbers be then? Like, we may not have seen the ceiling yet.
Yeah, you're 100% right. You're 100%, and that's scary. That's scary. Definitely. And then on top of that, the one out, like you already hit on it. The one out was this Bonifacio dude cut into his target. He cut into his share last week. He was getting some work. Bonifon, that's his name. That was like the one out we had, and now he's on IR. So it seems like it's going to be the Mike Davis show. So like it or not, I'm playing Mike Davis this week. Like I said, I'll play him with Teddy. I'll play him without. But I will be playing Mike Davis. Holla at your boy. The last spot, and we need news. We definitely need the news. But I'm definitely interested in the running back situation for the Niners. Whether it be Mostert or McKinnon. I'm hoping Mostert's just out. Let it be easy with McKinnon. Because if Mostert's in, he's been limited all week. You got to wonder what they're going to fucking do. There's no way they're going to go to Mostert and say, you're playing 60% again. I think at best, we're looking at 50-50. And we're probably more likely looking at like a 45-55 because he's coming back from an injury. Depending on how competitive Miami is. And so I'm a little nervous I'm hoping Mostert is just out and we can just play McKinnon. Because this is a great spot for 49er running backs. Miami's given up 4.48 yards per carry. And they've also given up the 10th most receiving yards to running backs as well. So I think it's an overall good spot for us. Hopefully we get that good news. I don't want nothing wrong with most. I'm hoping they just give it another week. Give it another week to rest up, bring him back healthy. All that good shit. Talk to me about the guys below.
All right. It's ugly down here. I do think David Johnson is worth some ownership this week. Jacksonville is very bad against the run. New coach, maybe they do involve him more in the pass game. I do think they play from ahead, which has not been common for Houston, and we have not seen that kind of game script for David Johnson. His price is down even further. He wasn't that popular last week, but he probably was the most popular he's been this year, and he really kind of dudded. So I don't think he gets any ownership this week, and I think he's kind of interesting. Antonio Gibson, 5K, Washington, should be trailing against the Rams. He's had, to me, he's like the same player as James Robinson. He's just, James Robinson's had a couple bigger games and scored a few touchdowns, so his stats look better, but they feel like the same kind of guy. And he's 5K and going to be lower owned, so I could get a little bit of that. Chase Edmonds is a guy that I'm going to be much higher on than the field. I think there's something up with Drake. Too many good spots, and he's just failed in all of them. His carry totals have been on the decline. He's just non-existent in the pass game. And Chase Edmonds has shown ability. He had like a 3-touchdown game against the Giants last year. And, Kenyon Drake dealt with injury in the offseason. Maybe he's lost a step. Maybe he's still dealing with that injury. And I wouldn't be surprised if they made the switch. And even if they don't, you can pass all over the Jets. That's what you want to do. And he's going to get the ball in the pass game. He's very, very cheap. I think this is a great spot for him. And add the fact that maybe like you hit the nuts and they switch to him after like a fumble from Kenyon Drake in the first quarter and he goes off like we've seen him do before. But even if that doesn't happen, even if they stay with what they've been doing, I think he gets 10 to 15 touches in a really good spot against the Jets. And a game I think will be kind of closer than expected. And then I really like Devontae Freeman. Got 4 targets, caught all 4 of them, 11 carries, and he just got there. Like, he was bagging groceries 2 weeks ago, and it's another week of practice. I think he sees more of the market share. Gallman's been on the team for a while. He's never really done much. They wouldn't have went out and got Freeman and played him over Gallman if they liked Gallman. So I do like Devontae against Dallas, who's just straight awful at 46. Nasi.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't even think about the Edmonds thing. I think that's a very interesting play. On DraftKings, obviously, where we're trying to take advantage of the PPR, but I agree with you on Drake. I've been on Drake every week, and watch this will be the week he fucking breaks it because I have no interest in him this week. It just this will be it.
I'm forcing at least 5%.
Yeah, right. It's just because we're vested at this point.
But, I mean, I've watched him, twice, 2 weeks in a row now.
Right.
It looks like something's off there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I agree.
Last year, he was breaking slates on the regular.
Yeah.
This season, and they're not even throwing him. I mean, I know they got Hopkins, and that changed the complexity of their offense, but they could have done that with some of their personnel last year, and they elected to throw to him a lot more. It's like
they're using Hopkins like he's Christian McCaffrey playing receiver. He's going short. Yeah. As soon as he's open, hitting him with the ball and trying to let him make a play. That's what it's weird. It's really weird. I mean, you can't tell me that there weren't situations where they could have thrown the ball to Drake. They just don't want to. Like they don't want to throw it to Drake. When Drake's on the field, they either want to run it or they want to get it to Hopkins. And then Edmonds is the guy that's been benefiting from all this. Because the third down, they got no choice. They need a first down. So if the running back's open, you better throw it to him. And he's the guy benefiting. So I wouldn't be surprised if we started to see some momentum switching that backfield either. I'll agree with that. And I also agree with you that I probably should have 5% or so just because. Just because we're pretty fucking vested in that guy. I like what you said about David Johnson. Because I like Watson, I will have some shares with David Johnson as well. I wish he would get involved in the pass game more. We know that the coach and GM got fired, O'Brien, and now we got Cornell. Maybe they will. Maybe they'll look and see like where he was successful the most as a workhorse, and maybe they'll try to do that and stabilize the offense and control the clock a little more. Either way, 5,200 seems too cheap. I think Jacksonville is, going to end up being like DVOA tells us that things will correct itself out and they're better against the pass. I'm sorry, against the run than the pass. They were doing really good against running backs until Joe Mixon went apeshit on him last week. They were doing pretty, but it's not like they faced a ton of vaunting running backs. So let's be honest, And then the other one is Antonio Gibson. I think that this is more of to me, this is a DraftKings thing. I'm not too into it on FanDuel because I think I'm not touchdown hunting with Gibson. I just think that with Kyle Allen, a guy that played with Christian McCaffrey last year and was comfortable checking down constantly to his running back. Again, the coaching staff now with Washington was the same coaching, or at least part of it, with what they had in Carolina last year. So I really think that we've also heard rumblings, the offensive coordinator and all that, they think that Gibson has the McCaffrey usage potential. And we're starting to slowly see them give him more and more. The Rams have actually not been that good against running backs. They're allowing 4.84 yards per carry and a total of 151 yards per game. Their last 3 games, they've given up at least three touchdowns last 3 games total, right? So I think there's a lot of cases you can make for him. He's only 5K on DraftKings, a PPR site. I do like, again, I think I was explaining to you earlier, like, I'm not necessarily jamming him in over everyone, but if I built a team and I'm at the flex and I got 5K left, he's probably the guy for me, assuming my other guys in that range are already in. Holla. With that said, Paulie, let's go to receivers. Talk to me about the spend ups. Take me down to like 6.5.
All right. I am going to have a shit ton of DeAndre Hopkins. I think it's an absolute fucking smash spot. And we're going to have the money. There's just no reason not to get him. I don't care if it's with Kyler, without, whatever. He probably will end up being in my top 3 highest home plays this week. Where'd you tell me to go down to?
I guess we'll stop at like 6.5. 6.6 down to Fuller. Will Fuller.
All right. Cool with Ridley. We'll see what his injury status is. Don't mind Cooper. Really like Tyreek Hill. Don't mind Juju. Just feel like there's a lot of mouths to feed over there, and he would just be like a contrarian dart. Hopefully touchdown variance goes his way. Absolutely love Will Fuller. Core play last week, did absolutely fine. Was on the verge of being a slate breaker. That last touchdown that did get reversed.
Until I jinxed you.
Yes.
Until I jinxed you.
Outside of one dud week against Baltimore, he's been pretty dirty. And this is the easiest matchup they've had to date. And I absolutely love the spot for Will Fuller. We'll have a ton of him and Hopkins.
Holla all day. I like it. I do like Will Fuller a lot. I'm with you on Hopkins. The ownership on Hopkins is crazy low. This Jets secondary is fucked. Like people who think that their defense is bad against the run, you just haven't looked at their secondary. Now, I know that when you look at the situation, people may say, oh, but fantasy points haven't really been scored that much against the Jets. It's been the running backs. That has everything to do with the Jets not offensively pushing the other team to have to throw more. Teams just haven't had to do anything. And that could be the case this week. There's that potential. But not for nothing, but I haven't been all that impressed with Arizona at all on either side of the ball. So I think, like you said, I think this game can be a little bit more close, or at least close enough to where the Cardinals can't fuck around. And they're going to have to try to throw, especially because forget about the Jets themselves as a run defense. Let's talk about how, as an offense, Arizona has looked like shit. They're not running the ball. It's not just Drake. The linemen aren't giving him holes. It's everybody. The whole process, the whole team, and their approach to running the ball has been wrong. So I think they're going to have to throw. We know that all the targets are going to D-Hop. It's amazing to me that D-Hop is projecting for such low ownership despite the fact that he's been so consistent. I mean, he's been so consistent with targets, and last week people didn't know if he was going to play. I know he didn't play great, but he still played, and he still got a ton of targets to lead the team. That's what's happening. So I'm with you on D-Hop. Although I will say I always like D-Hop better on DraftKings because he's kind of like Julio back in the day. He's not always a lock for the end zone. You just know he's going to get his 15, 16, 17 targets. Now, this week, I think he can get in the end zone. I think he will get in the end zone. But just in general on D-Hop, I'm always going to like a guy like D-Hop more on DraftKings. Um, Calvin Ridley, I'm okay with. I'm kind of more interested in Gage. We'll talk about that later. I know you have interest in Gage as well. So I think like maybe it's wishful thinking, but it's a good bounce back spot for Ridley. Don't get me wrong. It's a very good bounce back spot for him. It probably is more of a money thing for me, I think, at 7,500. But I again, like, can't take anything away from him. The last time Julio was out was in week 3 when he fully missed the game. Really got like 12 targets against the Bears. This is obviously a much softer matchup than the Bears. So I do think that Ridley is someone that I'm going to have to kind of open my mind up a little bit more to. Tyreek Hill, I agree with you on. I do like the spot for Tyreek. I think that explosive players have done well against the Raiders. I think that Mahomes will be able to go deep when he wants to. And I think that once Hill gets the ball, he's not going to have an issue scoring. And I like the fact that he's projecting for fairly low ownership. I also like Juju Smith-Schuster. Now, the receiver, obviously, there's a lot of guys to talk about. I do like Juju. So the slots in this situation, let me see what I have here. So Sims, Cup, can't even read my own fucking writing. Another slot guy. I can't. I don't know what the fuck I wrote, but 18 for 22, right? 256 yards, 11.6 yards per attempt to the slot. We're at home. Juju's playing out of the slot. It looks like Juju could be kind of leveragey also, just like Connor can, because Deontay Johnson's actually projecting for fairly high ownership, and it seems more than likely with all the reps out of the slot that Juju plays, it seems like Johnson's going to be the one matched up with Slay most of the time. That's what I would think. So I do think Juju is kind of a sneaky one. And Fuller, I mean, how do you not like Fuller this week? I know Jacksonville hasn't done, number one receivers haven't really done well against them. Well, the fuck if they really played? Where number one receiver, AJ Green is looking washed as ever. Devontae Parker, they just didn't need to. They were just dominating Jacksonville. So to me, I don't know. I'm cool with. I'm good with Fuller. I like him a lot. Take me down to like 5K now.
All right. I do really like DJ Chark. Guy's just talented. Because he's in Jacksonville, he doesn't get the notoriety. Misses a game, comes right back, goes 895 and 2 touchdowns. Seems to have a nose for the end zone. They should be trailing. Houston defense is terrible. I can go on and on and on. Minnesota had 200-yard receivers, or very close to, last week against them. Not Houston, Minnesota. So do really like DJ Chark. I don't mind DJ Moore. I just don't get the ownership obsession. I strongly prefer Robbie Anderson. He just, I didn't think he'd have this big a role in this offense, but it's 4 games in a row now, and this is the best spot. You just, he's on a different team. We've got to accept that this could be what he is now and continue playing him at cheap prices until he, is up to 7K. I don't mind Devontae Parker now that he seems to be back healthy, and they should be trailing against San Fran. I like Michael Gallup. I like Deebo Samuel. I like Russell Gage. I like Jarvis Landry. That's it down to 5. But that's a pretty deep. I forgot CeeDee Lamb. I like CeeDee Lamb. The reason that Hopkins is not going to be that popular is because receivers loaded in the mid-tier.
Right.
Like, I just had a bunch of I likes without a lot of supporting, information. I missed Jamison Crowder, who I like a ton too. Arizona is basically averaged 10 yards or more per pass, per reception allowed. And I think Jamison just does the dirty on them as well. So all those guys look good to me, and I would be really hard pressed to rank them, especially this far away. Like, I don't know, Russell Gage, I could almost end up with none of if Julio does in fact play. We got to see Deebo Samuel's status. There's still a lot out there, but it's deep. I would say Michael Gallup, CeeDee Lamb appear to be in really good spots. I do like Jamison Crowder, and if Julio's out, I do like Russell Gage as well.
I agree with you, man. I got a lot of names on these lists too, man. Oh, it's all over the place. Now, I'll say this. Running backs, I don't like as many running backs, but the running backs I like, I'm cool with I'm cool with going heavy on. The receivers, because there's so many I like, and because I often pair them with my quarterbacks. A lot of times, like at least one, if not two, or usually at least two. A lot of the times are dedicated to one stack because at the very least I'm doing a bring back on the other side. So with that said, I'm with you on Chark. Adam Thielen, eight receptions, 141 yards, and a touchdown. Justin Jefferson, 4 receptions, 103 yards. Tyreek Hill, 5 receptions, 46 yards, a touchdown. Houston gives up touchdowns to receivers. And with DJ Chark back, I do think he's going to go back to taking his number one role, as we saw last week. I also like DJ Moore. I actually like DJ Moore a lot. Now, I think Robbie Anderson, it seems like every week everybody's chasing DJ Moore. It seems like this week, because of Mike Davis's ownership and because Robbie Anderson's performance, that Moore is actually falling below those two in certain ownership projections, depending on where you look. Now, the reason I like DJ Moore, we had talked about Atlanta earlier when I talked about Teddy, and Atlanta's allowing the most pass completions of 20 yards or more. Well, DJ Moore is the leader in air yards for Carolina, and he's also the leader in ADOT. So he's the one that they're targeting more down the field. So if we are having more success down the field, I would think that leads to DJ Moore finally having a big game. With that said, I really like the triple stack of Moore and Anderson because I don't think there's anything here that's going to stop Anderson from doing what he's doing. I don't think he's going to not get the targets he's been getting. He's the current target leader right there, and he's been playing like the number one receiver. So I like them both. Let's see what else we got here. I think Parker, like you said, has some upside. What's his name? Shit.
Where are you on CeeDee Lamb and Michael Gallup?
I prefer Lamb, personally. It's all about the slot. We saw Juju Smith-Schuster against the Giants. 6 receptions, 69 yards, 2 touchdowns. Cooper Kupp, 5 receptions, 69 yards, and a touchdown. I just think that's an easy way to go, especially if Dak is under pressure. I think he'll look towards his tight end. He'll look towards his slot. And the slot's been where the Giants have been a little bit more vulnerable. Especially if this ends up being that type of low-scoring game. So I prefer Lamb. I'm cool with Gallup, but I do prefer Lamb. I mean, Bradbury's going to be on Cooper. We know that, right? I would think that's going to be just a matchup the Giants just try to stick with. They got Bradbury for a reason. They're hoping to be able to play more man with him, or at least as far as he's concerned, take receivers out of the situation. And to be honest, Bradbury's done a pretty fucking good job. Let's be honest. He's actually done a decent job so far.
Yeah.
What else do we got here in this range? You mentioned Parker. I'm with you. I think that game is kind of interesting, right? Nobody's really talking a ton about that game, but it's got a 50-something total, right? And it just seems like the ownership in general in that game is just kind of falling. I'll cut it there. One other guy I'll mention. Hollywood Brown, right? We talked about Lamar Jackson. Really like Hollywood Brown this week. I like Andrews too, but I do like Hollywood Brown. Cincinnati's is not good at pressuring the quarterback, which I think means that Hollywood Brown will have an opportunity to finish his routes. And either Lamar's going to run if nothing's open, or he's going to be able to find, a beatable situation. DJ Chark went 8 receptions, 93 yards, 2 touchdowns. The other guy, Laviska, 5 receptions, 86 yards. Odell Beckham, 4 receptions, 74 yards, a touchdown. And that's right up Brown's alley, right? He's never been like a 12-target guy. He's going to get like fucking 6 to 8, and he's probably going to catch 4 or 5, but they're going to be down the field and probably big plays. So I do like him for show. What about Value Town, Paulie?
Yeah, I love Darius Slayton. He's the number 1 receiver on the Giants. Dallas just cannot defend the pass, and I think he goes off. He's really like a home run hitting type receiver. Big play waiting to happen, and I do think the Giants trail on the road, and Danny Dimes has the time to throw, and will throw to him early, often, and successfully. I like Zach Pascal of Indianapolis. Not a game that I'm that enthralled with, but I do think that Phillip Rivers likes, big, tall receivers. Zach Pascal is that. He had 8 targets last week after Pittman and the other receiver went down. He's clearly got this role. He'll be in all the offensive snaps. And, we saw Dallas throw for 500 yards against this Cleveland defense. I like T. Higgins. If A.J. Green is not the same, T. Higgins um, is the guy to replace him. They thrown to him a ton, and he's a big, tall stud receiver that could also do something in garbage time if Baltimore blows them out at a cheap price. Olamide Zaccheaus, min price. The moment Julio tapped out of that Monday night game, he became the number one target, got 9 targets. The week before that, got 6. And it's just, Matt Ryan seems to always lean on that second or third receiver, which we saw against Green Bay, and this feels like a very similar spot, and min price. What's not to like there? Also like Golden Tate from the Giants. I just expect him to be trailing, throw a lot. If it's not Ingram, if it's not Slayton, it'll be Golden Tate, who's another week healthier. What else is down here? Oh, Jeff Smith, Jets. Think he's gonna, he got 9 targets last week, and expect the Jets to be kind of trailing. As I mentioned, you can throw all over Arizona, and another guy that's min price with, was impressive, man, in that game against Denver. Got some wheels, gonna be on the field a bunch. I can dig that. Those are probably the main. Oh, Mecole Hardman. Shout out to Joey. He seems to have clearly become, the next passing option after Kelsey and Hill in the offense. 4 targets last week, 6 targets. They're trying to get him the ball in space. He scored a touchdown in 2 back-to-back weeks, and I just don't think the Raiders can tackle very well in the open field, and I don't think they have very much speed in their secondary. So, good spot for Mecole Hard. Let's see. Hunter Renfrow. Kansas City's good against the pass. They're, similar to a lot of teams, are weak over the middle and against the slot. And this Renfrow kid is good. Can run after the catch. Seems to have developed a nice rapport with Carr. Don't really care if Ruggs is there or not. I think he gets his work. If the Chiefs were smart, they would key in on Waller, and should be good for Hunter Renfrow. Let's see. That's the extent. What else do you need? You got 2 min price guys, and you got some guys directly under 5 that have big upside. I don't think I really play too many more guys down here, but there's a couple you could talk about, like Sammy Watkins, T.Y. Hilton, but something seems off there too, and it just doesn't seem to be clicking with him and Rivers, and it's not at home or not on turf, so I don't really play T.Y. there. But give me a lot of Slayton, Higgins, Pascal, Tate, and the 2 min price guys.
It doesn't seem. I'm surprised. I'm looking at a couple different places, and I'm surprised that how do you say his name? Zaccheaus? Is it? Zaccheaus. I'm surprised he's not more popular. And I guess it's because people don't need the money, I guess, because the studs just aren't that expensive. But I mean, yeah, like you said, if he's stepping into the Julio Jones role, okay, what if, granted, he's not Julio Jones. He's actually the opposite of Julio Jones. He's not that fast as far as 40 time, and he's really short. So he's the opposite. But even last year, he steps into this role whenever Julio is not playing. I'm sorry, week 3 against the Bears, it was the same kind of situation. So to not take some shots at a guy that's min price seems crazy. And the same thing with Jeff Smith. Perriman is doubtful. Mims is still on the IR. Le'Veon Bell, I don't know, but that's regardless as a running back. You got Joe Flacco. It can't be. I don't think it's great, but I don't necessarily know that's terrible. And I agree with you that the Cardinals' defenses look like shit. So I think we have a couple 3K options to pay in. I think it's easier to go with Zaccheaus because Matt Ryan is a better fucking quarterback. He's got a better quarterback, obviously. They're at home in a dome, and matchup is phenomenal. So everything lines up. But I'm with you, man. He seems like a pretty strong value play. I like Slayton as well. DK Metcalf, 4 receptions, 110 yards, and a touchdown. Calvin Ridley, 7 receptions, 109 yards, 2 touchdowns. Robert Woods didn't get a touchdown, but on 6 receptions, he had 105 yards. OBJ, 5 receptions, 81 yards, 2 touchdowns. It just seems, again, like just a really good spot for Slayton. And I like Ingram a lot too. We'll talk about that. But if it's not Slayton, then you would think if Slayton doesn't have a big game, then at least from a PPR standpoint, Golden Tate must have. He must have had about 12, 13 targets, which is possible if Danny Jones is uncomfortable for any reason. But if he's comfortable, you would think he's going to throw it to Slayton down the field, like everyone else has done against the Giants. Against the Cowboys. So I'm with you. I think those two are really strong value plays. Not even together. I mean, if you're playing Danny Jones, sure, I like Ingram more than Tate, but I think both of those guys are definitely solid value. Even T.Y. Hilton, like you said, they've got Ward, they've got good players, but the pass has been their weakness, and Dallas showed you that last week. Like, it's not just that. Cleveland's been torched by receivers all season. They have an issue with that. So I definitely think there's some options. I'm not going to get into it. I mean, we could talk about Cobb and Cooks and all these guys that I would really only use in triple stack situations. But as far as value goes, like you said, man, that Zacchaeus guy, the Jeff Smiths, and then just forget about it. Slayton alone just seems like pretty good situations. Real quick, just one tidbit on Russell Gage. I do like Gage is my favorite bring back as of right now, assuming Julio is out, and it's because of ownership. So I like Zacchaeus and builds. He helps my builds get better. As far as bring backs using game theory, I do think Ridley's going to be fairly popular. I think Gage's ownership is going to be really low, and slots have been really efficient against Carolina's zone defense. Slot receivers have been really efficient with completions and all that. So on DraftKings, I got some interest there. With that said, Paulie, let's go to tight ends, brah. Talk to me about the tight ends. I guess we'll stop it at stop at like 5K.
All right. First time in a minute, we got the 2 studs up top, or even 3. I do have no problem with all 3 of them. I don't think I roster any of them a ton, but Kittle, Kelsey, and Mark Andrews, all very, very appealing. I think Mark Andrews feels to me like the most likely to get a touchdown, but doesn't have the yards and reception upside that Kelsey and Kittle have. I guess if I had to rank them, I'd go Andrews, Kittle, Kelsey. Kelsey, has done well against Oakland in the past, but I actually respect the safety from Oakland, and I think it's a Hill or a Mecole Hardman spot, so he'd probably be the one I have the least out of this group. And more, I like the kind of mid-tier again, more so than these studs. Waller, in a trailing role, should get a ton of volume. We've seen, it's basically him and the running back in their offense. That's all they really use. And outside of New England shutting them down, 16 targets, 12 targets, 105 yards, 88 yards. And the Chiefs are great against the wideouts. The middle of the field is where you want to attack. So seems like a good spot for him. Don't mind Zach Ertz against Pittsburgh, but he seems to have lost a little something. There's no run after the catch anymore with this guy. Where he catch it, that's where he goes down. But they're still missing a bunch of guys in that offense, and I have a funny feeling this game is close, and he should get enough targets so if he does happen to get 2 touchdowns, he could be valuable. Don't mind. Where do you want me to cut off? Right there? You're muted.
Son of a bitch. Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, so Kittle I wasn't terribly interested in because I think that I expect them to be able to run the ball effectively, and he's really expensive. I'm not saying don't play Kittle, just saying that I was having a hard time reaching him when I was building the teams that I liked. I agree with you on Kelsey. It's a good spot for Kelsey, but he's also expensive, and I kind of like the spot for his running back, and I like the spot for Tyreek Hill. So it was enough of an excuse for me to back off of Kelsey. Andrews I'll have in stacks with Lamar, but that's it. Just stacks with Lamar because I'm looking for that ceiling, and I want them both to ball out. Waller I think is legit. I agree with you that I think if Kansas City have a brain, they will try their best to stop Waller. But Waller's, I mean, he leads the league in fucking receptions right now and targets and everything. Like, what's not to like?
Yep.
Tyler Higbee's kind of interesting. I just don't like how Gerald Everett's just floating around there. You never really know what you're going to get. But tight ends have done well against Washington so far this season. This tier is, I'm just not crazy about spending up. Paulie, talk to me about the guys below.
Yeah, so I do like the spot for Hayden Hurst if Julio's out. You know, we saw Austin Hooper in this offense last year, and 6 targets last week, 8 targets in week 2. They could be trailing. If they're leading, it's probably through the air. And, you know, I expect him and Matty Ice to kind of continue to their relationship grow. And I think a blow-up game is coming, like the price tag. Love Evan Ingram. He's getting the volume. As I mentioned, I think Danny Dimes finds the time to throw, which he really has been struggling with for the most part this season. And that's why you see like the, like lower than average completion rate to most of his receivers. I think that changes this week. And I think the target in a trailing role, like, he could have 10 catches and, best spot to find the end zone, since the season started, because they've gone up against 4 top 10 defenses all 4 games. I do like Eric Ebron from Pittsburgh. He's his role has continued to increase. Another week of practice without the game in the way. He went 2 targets week 1, 5 targets, then 7 targets. And, Philly can be thrown on. We just saw what Kittle did against them. Seems to be a good spot for the Ebron. I don't mind Drew Sample. I don't mind Dalton Schultz. Mo Alley Cox, I wish he got more volume with what's his name around Jack Doyle. It's kind of tough, but he does have some really good peripheral kind of stats, air yards and whatnot. And then Logan Thomas, right? Like, we played the shit out of this guy. He finally gets a quarterback change that could benefit him. And, no one's going to play him. And this could be the week where he finally does well. So I do want to make a point to get some Logan Thomas as well in the cheap seats.
Yeah, just real quick before I go back to the top of Value Town, touching on the Mo Alley Cox situation. Last week was really discouraging. Now the good news is the Colts, because they're missing so many receivers, they're not doing 3 receiver sets. It's 2 receivers, 2 tight ends pretty much every time. The downside is, now that Trey Burton is back, Mo Alley Cox really took a big hit in his play time. He played the least out of all 3 of the guys, and it was a pretty substantial difference. I think Jack Doyle played the most, and then Burton had the most targets. So I'm really concerned about where Mo Alley Cox fits in all this, and it's just really shitty, because this is a great spot for tight ends, but you got 3 guys to kind of choose from, and it makes it real difficult. But I just wanted to touch that. I agree with you. This is a great spot for tight ends. It just kind of sucks with the situation that they're in. Going back up, my favorite tight end is Evan Ingram this week. No surprise, right? He is the Giants' target leader, I believe. Tight ends against Dallas. Hurst, 5 receptions, 77 yards, and a touchdown. Greg Olsen had 61 yards on 5 receptions. It's just, and none of those guys are as big as a piece of their offense as Evan Ingram is on the Giants. So I'm with you. Evan Ingram, like, half the time he's lined up as a receiver. Half the time he's lined up in the slot or wide. So if we like the receivers against Dallas, and we like, tight ends have also done, why wouldn't you like a guy who's leading the team in targets, who's also getting a chance to play receiver and get some of those mismatches? So I love Evan Ingram this week. With that said, I also think that Eric Ebron is a phenomenal play, right? We saw what Kittle did to the Niners, to the Eagles. We're not looking for Ebron to be like Kittle, but you don't have to. He's only 4K. He's cheap. You don't need him to be like Kittle to go out there and do thy dirty. Then I start to get real like cheap, but like dependent on the quarterbacks. I think the Houston Texans tight end situation is kind of interesting. Now, in this scenario, you're not going for ceiling. This is obviously a punt. But if you're going to punt, might as well punt with some correlation. stacking between Cobb and Cooks is sometimes tough to really come to that. You could use David Johnson, but if you're using Watson, I don't hate the idea of going with like Fuller and then a tight end. Tight ends have done really well in this particular spot. But I would feel more comfortable. I think there's been three touchdowns against the Jacksonville Jaguars so far from the tight end. Akins is currently questionable with a concussion. If he's out, then I think that really helps Darren Fells as like the obvious choice at tight end, right? 3,300, no problem. If he's in, it makes it murky because he's actually the one that's more likely to catch a pass. So it gets kind of tricky. But I'll say that I don't mind doing that because receiver, there's so many good plays. So many good plays. So I can do a triple stack that way, hope he gets a touchdown, and still be able to get two other receivers that I actually like, rather than have to pick between Cobb and Cooks, who both kind of look shitty. So he's somebody I'll only play in lineups with Deshaun. I'm with you on Logan Thomas also for the value. I think that makes a lot of sense. Maybe this quarterback is capable of actually using Thomas and getting him the fucking ball. That'd be nice. But that's pretty much where I'm at. The last guy I'll mention was that.
You like Chris Herndon?
You know, I want to. My concern is that it's not just the Jets not giving the ball to Herndon. My concern is the Jets' offensive line has been so bad that they're asking him to just block too much. You know, so I guess if we think that Flacco's going to be under pressure, then I guess no, because I think they're going to ask Herndon to block. But if Flacco ends up having more time, then yeah, they'll probably have him go out there and go catch a pass for once, which I think he can do. So I think he's on the table. Do I like him a lot? No, but I think he's on the table. You know, this is a really shitty we saw what tight ends did to Atlanta. We looked at Jimmy Graham, Tanyan last week. It's a damn shame that we're in this situation with Carolina because it's just such a waste of a tight end position. Yeah, it's great for the receivers. I get all that shit, and I like Teddy and all that, but man, playing tight ends against Atlanta is just a beautiful thing. And unfortunately, not only does Ian Thomas not get a ton of work, I say this, he finally got a touchdown, but he was actually outsnapped by Chris Manhertz. So that gets complicated, but obviously, right, a really good spot in general for tight ends. I know that he got outsnapped, but he had 5 targets and caught touchdowns. Maybe it had something to do with them leading. They were trying to have the other guy in to run more. Possibility. Maybe if they're losing this time, they do have Thomas back in. But again, we're talking about punts. If you don't feel comfortable with the receivers, there are 3 other options you're going to play over this guy from Carolina alone: Mike Davis, Robbie Anderson, and fucking DJ Moore. You're going pretty deep to look for Thomas. I just wanted to mention because Atlanta's so fucking bad against tight ends, but I guess there's always a point. Defenses I haven't done a ton of work on, but there's only a couple that send out to me. Paulie, what are your thoughts overall on defense?
Yeah, same here. I haven't done a ton of work, but Arizona, I would think, will be popular, right, against Joey Flax. You know, the Steelers, Eagles O-line's just been terrible. You got to think the Rams are going to be popular, right?
I would think so.
I don't mind the Chiefs. I think the Giants are kind of interesting as that punt. You know, Dak has thrown picks every week. Zeke's had some fumble problems this season. He's had 3 already this year. So the Giants at 2,200 would be very leveragey and sneaky and could work in a game stack with those guys. Just like, you know, similar to like the Jameis Winston kind of things where like Dak throws a pick 6 or Zeke fumbles, the Giants take it to the house, get a couple sacks and some picks. I think they're like 6th in the league in picks. Houston also for very cheap against Jacksonville. You know, maybe J.J. Watt and company finally show up against Jacksonville's below average offensive line. I think Young is supposed to be back for Washington. We saw like in weeks 1 and 2 what kind of pressure they were able to generate. Then he was out weeks 2 and 3, and they got barely any pressure. A total of 3 sacks versus 11 in the first 2. So if he's back, they're cheap, and Goff does have the tendency to kind of get happy feet and throw some picks when under pressure. So don't mind that. Young would have to be in. But, in a week where we'll have the money, I think it makes sense to kind of chase the higher floors and the opportunities where the teams could really blow up. There's like 3 weeks a season where I think we've seen the Colts do it like twice already, where defense scores like 20 plus, and you had to have them to really take anything down. And if you got the money, you might as well spend up instead of doing those punts that really they allow you to have better lineups, but you need like no defense to blow up for that to work out for you.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And I'm in the same boat, man. Like, there's some punts I could take a shot on, like you said. I think while I like the offenses in the game, the Giants and Cowboys both, I think, are puntable, viable options. I think that the Cleveland Browns are a viable punt option, fairly cheap against just a team that doesn't really do a whole ton offensively, in the Colts. But if you can afford the good defenses, the Steelers are my favorite, right? Against a good defensive line, a team that likes to blitz, against a team that's really struggling. I know they're coming off a win against San Francisco, but the Steelers defense basically coming off a bye. Oh, they are coming off a bye. At home, they blitz more than anyone in the league, and they're pretty damn good at putting pressure on quarterbacks, which Wentz has an issue with from teams who don't do that. So it just seems, they cover the tight end well, so their biggest threat is Ertz, and he's not in a good matchup. I'm with you in like if I can buy the floor, I'm all for it, and I think I can because of the value that we have. And not to mention, these are the same teams that kind of have that ceiling. So I'm all for spending up. I do like the Colts defense against Cleveland. We're gonna find out about Cleveland. Like, was that Atlanta thing Atlanta? Because it's all gonna come together, right? Like if the Giants suck ass against Dallas, I wouldn't be surprised if Cleveland did well against the Colts, because we're going to find out that Cleveland's offense isn't as bad as it's looked. It's starting to click. However, if the Giants do well against the Cowboys, then I would expect Cleveland to struggle offensively, because that tells me that it was just a matchup thing. It's just the Cowboys are terrible. So I think we're going to find out. They always say week 5, man. They always say week 5 is when you find out, the truth. So we'll find out this week for sure. I saw somebody in the chat asked about that. Whether we think the Colts defense is real or not. I think it has a lot to do with the opponents they've played. They haven't exactly played the most daunting of offenses, right? The Jets, the Bears, Jacksonville, who, by the way, Jacksonville beat them in week 1, put up 27 points. So I don't think the Colts defense is as good as it looked like, they're in this elite defense, but I do think they're good enough to beat up on bad offenses. So it really comes down to what you think of Cleveland this week. But long term, I think the Colts defense is good. They're one of the better defenses in the league, but I don't think they're as elite as they've looked necessarily.
Agree.
I'll let your boy. All right, Nation, if you have any questions, get them up in there. I see a bunch of you guys in the chat. We'll do what we do, and go through, give some shout outs, answer some questions, all the dirties. In the meantime, I think what does Joe usually do? Pick a game, right? Favorite games. What's your favorite game?
I guess it would be Carolina, Atlanta.
Yep, I think Carolina, Atlanta. That'd be mine too. I don't think. I mean, shit. Yeah, I'm cool with that. I would give another. I try to force another one, but that's so clearly the game to me. I'd be full of shit if I just said another game. I'd be saying it for the sake of saying it. So,
I love the Giants side at their price matchup, a ton of things.
Yeah,
I think that like I told you a couple days ago, and it still stands true. Like, there's a chance I make a rule that I force at least one Giant skill player into all my lineups, but a lot of that has to do with their price compared to, the rest. And like, I don't love the Dallas situation, so that's why it's not like a full game stack that is like the true heart of that question. But I love the Giants side, as an individual spot.
I agree, man.
Game stack wise, it's got to be that Carolina, Atlanta.
Yeah, I mean, put it this way: if the Giant players that we plan on playing were as expensive, even as OBJ, probably wouldn't be as heavy on them. But they're not. They're significantly cheaper. Like, yeah, I understand they're not as good, but you're getting a tremendous discount in a phenomenal matchup to take that chance. And I'm with it, man. Not to mention, bro, like, Danny Dimes did not look like he wasn't this bad last year, right? Like, give the guy some credit. He's seen some tough defense. This is not just about, oh, the Cowboys defense is horrendous. Danny Dimes has played some tough defenses, man. Say what you will about the Niners. I know they're banged up. Still a good fucking defense. They still look pretty fucking good. The Rams defense is pretty fucking good. You played the Steelers defense, which is looking like one of the best in the league right now. So, no, not for nothing. But the Giants have had really tough matchups that they have. Their schedule has not been pretty. Bottom line. I'll let you boy. All right. Let's see. Pop up in here. Shout out to D Millie in the chat. Shout out to Chadwick. Our boy Tony A. Good to see a lot of the usuals. Our boy Moochie. Loving it. Shout out to Chris Cox. What's going on? Stacks. What's up? CH1300 is the Colts defense as good and fast as they look. Just tuned in. Sorry if you covered it already. No, I think you had asked that question right before we covered it. But I do think we basically answered it. Mike Concho says Higbee with 6 touchdowns on 6 targets for 6 total yards. Tony A says pick your best NFL game picks this week. So we already kind of picked the game we like DFS wise. Why don't we pick if there's anything against the spread you like?
I like the Jets a ton.
Ooh, the Jets to cover that ass. See that every day. I actually like the Steelers. It's kind of a fish move, but I know it's a big number. But I just don't see how the Eagles are really going to compete in this situation. Could be wrong. I'll let your boy. Don't think so, though. Shout out to those of you who did participate in the contest, the giveaway on. We did it on Tuesday. The drawing will be Saturday. Now, listen. I went back and looked at the comments. And it was basically Parlay City. All you got, I hate to say it, I appreciate y'all for participating. Unfortunately, everybody missed the parlay, right? Most people either said the Bucks, or the one person that said the Bears got the total wrong. But because y'all showed up and y'all gave it y'all best, and we asked y'all to respond, and some of y'all did, whoever did respond, it's too late now. You can't get on it. I can see the dates. As long as you wrote something, as long as you left a comment, you're going to be in the drawing. So on Saturday, when we do our drawing, your name will be in there. So all the people that commented in there, your name is in the hat. Appreciate you guys for participating. Free $50 giveaway. Holla at your boy. Make sure you show up. Subscribe to the channel. Notifications on so you don't miss out. And then next giveaway is going to be next week, so stay tuned for that. Paulie, anything in closing before we get up out of here, man?
Do the dirty, as we always do. No, but stay tuned all the way through lock. You don't know if someone else is going to pop for COVID and the slate changes. There's still a bunch of injury news. It's probably going to come out tomorrow. Article City for Screenshot City will be out tomorrow. And I think this slate is beatable. Because it's smaller, everything condenses and chalk increases. There's going to be a lot of opportunity in positions like receiver, tight end, very deep. I like these setups in NFL. These are the kind of weeks right around here. This is where the nation really got hot. Last year it was a Calvin Ridley week. I believe it was week 4. We got on him before the rest of the field. And that worked out. The year before that was a Calvin Ridley week around this time too.
Yeah, I think so.
But this is kind of the time where we kind of hit our stride. We got some data to look at, and the buys kick in, so the slates are smaller. COVID's kicking in, making them even smaller, and someone's going to do the dirty from the nation this week. I feel it.
I like it. And a great reminder too. Content will be up shortly. Patty and Joe's Cash Game article should be out by tomorrow. The latest, there are projections that you see on the screen, are projections that are downloadable at whitestake.com. Our cheat sheets will be posted up probably later tonight or tomorrow morning. My article will also be up either later tonight or tomorrow morning. Paulie D's will be out some point tomorrow night. So all the content will be up by tomorrow night. Latest Sunday morning. You never know if Paulie D has himself a little bender action. Get some late night action. But content at whitestake.com. If you're looking for more help, I'll let your boy know what it is. For Paulie D, for myself, the entire Whitestake Nation, as always, good luck.
Peace.
Yeah.